What's up, folks? Charlie McKenzie here, out with Dr. Allison Justice, having a great time at the Hemp Mine, here for field trials, their field day that they're putting on. Really great event. I was thoroughly pleased by the opportunity to come out here, and even more pleased that I get the opportunity to talk to Allison today. So we kind of wanted to discuss a little bit about why variety selection is so important in planning your next hemp crop. For your own success and your farm success, variety selection needs to be at the top of your mind. So I'll stop talking so much and introduce Allison. How are you today?
I am great. I am so excited to be in the South, with, sitting right beside you, Georgia boy, South Carolina girl, and
Absolutely.
Getting to play with cannabis right here in our fields, right here where my grandparents grew cotton and cattle, all sorts of other things. It's an honor to be a part of, and a lot of fun. A lot of work, but a lot of fun.
A lot of work is right, but
yeah.
I think we were lamenting a second ago that, like, who would have thought 10 years ago, even 5 years ago,
yes,
that we would be sitting in a field here in the South, nonetheless Georgia, South Carolina,
yep.
right, right here on the border. I think when we get down to it, the industry is changing a lot, and you're seeing a lot of growth, which is good and bad. Some of the good is that there's a lot of money being put into it. Some of the bad is that there's vultures out there.
Right.
And for me, educating and trying to help educate myself and those that are listening is of the utmost importance in our industry. I know you feel the same way, and you've done a lot of that work yourself. And that's really what this event was about.
Exactly.
I was actually really impressed by, not just taking the group on a field tour to look at the varieties, but also taking the time to educate and give them background maybe they don't have.
Right.
Do you find that when you meet a new farmer, especially over the past couple of years, that their context is different from each one of them from the next, right? So it's like, this guy has this picture of what's going on,
yeah. This
one has this. So does that make educating like that much more important for you and them as your customers?
Absolutely. I mean, just in general, for the love of the farmer, because born and raised on a farm, and I understand in many cases this is many farmers' last opportunity to have a crop that could save the farm. And so, being from also the cannabis industry, though, in California, I've seen the money push, the misinformation, the snake oil, and at the end of the day, it is a plant, but there's a lot of extra pieces to it, right? There's not only a farmer needing to know how to give water and fertilizer, they need to know who to trust, who's going to be their buyer,
yeah.
right? Who's processing this? Can you trust them? How are they processing? What should you focus on growing to support that processor's goal, or to optimize your field, to optimize the money you can make, depending on what they're doing. Genetic selection. Right now in the Southeast, North Carolina's been doing it a little while. Kentucky's been doing it a little while. Each state has its own regulations, which to some extent determine which genetics you can grow
yep.
to their capacity. So we're getting a lot of influence from the West Coast, which on one hand is good because they have experience, but on the other hand is bad because we don't have regional trials. I mean, the environment here in South Carolina is significantly different than Oregon or Southern California or, the high plains of Colorado. And so just because something performs very well there, because they're reputable growers, breeders, it doesn't always translate. And we need to know that.
Yeah.
And we need to spread that good word. And, it's not any sort of bashing. It's regional trials. Yep. That's all there is. There's a reason it's done in corn and on, petunias.
100%.
It's penny crops. Doesn't matter, but they're still across the nation regional trials. And it's where that farmer, that grower can make the most money where they live. And so that's kind of what we're trying to do. Taking different breeders, working together with these breeders, planting them, evaluating how they're doing, and from the ones that do well, producing liners for the regional farmer that can succeed that next year.
That's awesome. That's huge. Yeah, I think anyone that's listening that has someone tell them this variety performed in Oregon, it's going to perform great for you in South Carolina, it very well could be the case, but more than likely there's a chance that it's not going to perform anything like it performed. It could perform better, right? But in the end, knowing how the plant that you select for your next year performed last year is of tremendous value. Another thing that your company is focused on is vegetative liners.
Yes.
Versus feminized seed, or even seed that doesn't have any feminization rate to it. My question for you is, in your opinion, what advantage do you get in having a vegetative liner or a clone as opposed to having a seed or a seedling?
I do wholeheartedly believe seed's going to be the future.
Yep.
3 years, something like that, when, genetic backcrossing, stabilization, really having the science down for feminization is ready. It's the future.
It's a lot of work, though.
It's a lot of work, and we need time for that to work.
Yeah.
But time being, we do have good genetics, and we can grow a plant like this from a liner, and if you plant on a certain date, it's going to perform like this on your whole crop. Right now, if you do bring in seed, all right, if it's regular seed, meaning male and female, you're going to get probably 50-50 split male and female. You're sowing your acre. Then what? Well, you have to go back on your 1 acre, your 4,000 acres, whatever it is, and you have to cherry pick those males out. You're not going to get to every one of them on time. You're going to pollinate a lot of your females, and then you're stuck with a field, which a guy in Kansas, he did this on 300 acres, and he said it ended up looking like a mangy coyote after he picked all the males out.
Yep.
And it's exactly right.
Yep.
Not to say that what was left, it did well for him. He got 16%, but why take that risk when you can cover your whole acreage in your 20% crop that's a clone of the one that is a winner. In addition to that, the stabilization. And so when you do get a bag of seed and you germinate it, the phenotypes are just out of this world. And of course there's a few breeders out there that have it down almost all the way, but the majority do not. And so you have plants that are 10 foot tall, 3 foot tall. Some are you're going to get a pound per plant, some you'll get 4 pounds. I mean, that's just visually, right? And so that also crosses over to the potency.
Right.
So you might have 3%, 20%. And so it's hard to budget as a farmer.
Right.
What is my average going to be? What is my yield going to be? It's just hard to say.
Predictability.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that anyone who's farmed long enough and had some success knows that their success probably came from planning and having an understanding of the stepwise process to get to their goal. And if some of those variables can't be answered until the middle of the crop, those variables could throw you a curveball.
Yes.
And whether that's financially, whether that's legally, there's a lot of challenges that could come with that. And I agree with you that we're going to see a push forward, and there's a lot of money going towards folks breeding for feminized seed and high quality seed. But the question is, at this point in time, as a farmer, are you willing to put your money and possibly, like you described, your life savings on the line for unpredictability?
Right.
That makes a ton of sense. Now, in terms of looking at varieties and how varieties are shaking out for different growers over the course of the season, it seems to me like it would have a lot of value in a grower having a mid, an early, a late variety. For you as a company that's going to be providing liners, what value do you see in offering that type of selection to your customer?
Yeah, I think it's very important. And so, the Southeast is a big area, right? We can include Florida in that. And so they have extreme heat, extreme humidity up until November, right?
Yep.
And so, we've had growers visit that made it very clear a lot of our late varieties that here at this planting, or at a May planting time, have just begun to flower, that for them, that's a very important plant to think about, because maybe they can plant end of July, August even, and still have that photoperiod change, or some vegetative growth and the photoperiod change to support that climate. Early varieties, absolutely, plant right at that frost date, be able to finish, because it is a shorter photoperiod switch. Right. And then maybe squeezing out another crop. I don't know, maybe looking at it like we do autoflower, but just differently because of, you know, how these genetics are bred, where they come from. Right. Truly understanding that photoperiod trigger per variety.
It's huge. One of the things I was really impressed with while we were listening at the beginning of the field day was your commitment to understanding the varieties you're growing out here, whether they're some that y'all have bred or other breeders, understanding how the CBD and THC really start to form a curve and increase or level off over the entire crop.
Exactly.
Tell me why that's valuable to you and why it would be valuable to a grower.
Oh gosh, it's so important. I mean, to date, last year we didn't do that. Mm-hmm. We only did the last few weeks. But I think it's incredibly important, specifically in the states that look at total THC, where your crop truly is on the line. Right. If you were not harvesting prior to that 0.3% THC. And so by being able to give a grower, a farmer, a catalog that says, hey, this isn't perfect data, but we want something to start with, right? Right. Here's a graph that shows throughout the weeks, how does that THC spike? How does the CBD spike? Mm-hmm. And if nothing else, it's a guide with a solid data point of 2-3 week buffer where you better start testing. Yep. You better start testing quick. And each year we'll just grow on that. We'll, as testing gets cheaper, we'll have everyday data points, right? Per variety. And I think it's just a wonderful tool for a farmer just to give them more confidence, mitigating risk. That's the game. That's huge. Right? And that's so huge. Providing that risk mitigation for these farmers, I think is, that's what I want to provide for my family. Right. Because we produce commercially as well.
Right. Share more about that. Yeah, share more about that. I think it was when we were talking last time we talked, we kind of went down the path of, hey, both you and I are working with or talking to growers that their farm's on the line with this crop, 5th generation farm. And there's a lot of feelings that go along with that. So risk mitigation, obviously for you as the person who could be influencing all these farmers and being a farmer yourself, that's probably at the top of mind. Yeah. So tell me more about kind of, your family farm and how that inspired you to continue to do this and kind of open up where you guys are at now.
Yeah, so in South Carolina last year was the first year for hemp production. And I've been in cannabis for the past 4 years mm-hmm. now. But last year, we were cattle farmers. Prior to that, we were basically nurserymen. Yep. Had a ball and burlap tree farm, dug ornamental trees, and gave them to people to put in their yards. Very hard work, different type of work, but all horticulture, right? And so we did get away from that. My parents got into cattle. Yep. I got into research, but cattle prices have dropped. We're struggling, and with all the drought, it's a struggle to make any money with cattle. You're basically you're staying level. Yeah. And so when this opportunity came, I encouraged them, let's do this. Let's figure out how to grow hemp. Let's do it. Why not? And so they, to my surprise, were very much on board. Yeah. And so last year we grew about 16 acres. First year, in reality, everybody's first year is a trial. Everybody's 5th year is a trial, right? But we had zero guidance. We got plants from here, and we crossed our fingers. We had a decent crop, and so I was very proud of that crop. But I had no one guiding me. Right. Not really. And so, it was basically from that first year's experience, from seeing a lot of the farmers we work with, lose their tails from not feminized seeds that were not feminized. And, $60,000 is a big deal for seed. Yeah. And then for them to turn out half mouse. Yep. And, you know, as a scientist, I love making my own crosses and breeding, and, you know, we came out with some pretty good stuff. And so I thought, why not make this into a business that not only is a fun business for us, but it helps other farmers risk mitigate, right? If they're going to pay the same price for a clone or a seed, let's give them something good.
Yep.
Let's give them something good to grow. And that translates all the way to the extractor. And the extractor don't want to have to process 3%, 5% hemp. They want 20%, because that is, you know, 5 times less work they have to do filling their machines with wood, which is just plant material at 3%. Whereas they could have 20% and be so much less work for them. And so they want to pick the farmers that have the risk mitigated genetics.
Yep.
And so it creates a nice circle.
Yeah, no, paying it forward all the way through.
Yeah.
No, I understand. And giving back to your community, that's definitely special. So tell me more about this variety. It's actually something that I was pretty impressed with, and we're sitting in front of it for a reason. I noticed it's got a really nice structure to it. Did you pinch it at all?
This one was not pinched. It's got a very nice low type structure. Of course, every once in a while with huge range, it'll split like any plant.
Yep.
But it is quite resistant compared to other varieties we're growing. This one right here we're especially happy with because of the disease resistance. I mean, there's virtually no leaf spot. It's very resistant to Pythium phytophthora.
Yep.
And then on top of that, I mean, we've just got yield.
Yeah.
We've got yield.
It's there.
And on top of yield, we have potency.
Absolutely.
So we've seen this guy, top colas, of course, top out at 22%.
Wow.
But, you know, one of the more important numbers to think about is what's that shucked potency, right? Because I can throw out 22% all day long, but once you shuck it and take it to the processing facility, it might be anywhere from, you know, 16 to 18%, right? There's dilution there from the small stems, from the leaves, and that sort of thing. So, but regardless, a solid plant. So this is our definite number one. This is a selection.
Okay.
And so from the selection, this has been one of my the mothers for breeding. Absolutely, because I want this genetic through all of my lines. It's just a winner through and through.
Oh, I love it. So next year, for the 2020 season, something like this would be available in young plants and liners for growers to purchase? Absolutely.
50 and 72 cell trays, liners. Not root bound, healthy, no russet mites, ready to go.
That's the ticket, absolutely. And actually, you know, what she's alluding to is the two things that I've seen the most trouble with over the entire season across the entire country with folks that I've worked with and folks that I just talked to, in that they had a plant that should have been planted 3 or 4 weeks earlier, or it came with bugs and they didn't know about it, or it wasn't the right variety and they thought it was. A lot of challenges. You know, one of the things that I think is inspiring to me about what you're doing here is that in the industry, I think it's commonplace, and it's kind of, you know, people talk about brokers all the time, and it's like, well, send me your COA. This is the ultimate COA. What we're doing right now, right? It's I will bring you to my farm to show you how it performs, and you can see it how it would perform most likely in your environment, as long as your environment is similar to this. So I think that's a step in the right direction, and if anyone out there is listening and wants to steal a great idea and move our industry forward, I would recommend it. I'm sure Allison is like, hey, that's our baby we're putting together, but I'm head over heels excited about hopefully seeing the industry advance like this. The ornamental industry, like you described, corn, soy, this is where you will make the most educated decisions, not from an armchair, right?
Right.
So that's really exciting for me. In terms of your outlook, having spent time, you know, researching, then being in the THC cannabis industry, and now doing what you're doing with the hemp mine, what do you think the next 5 years looks like? And I know that's a crazy question because the past 5 years have been crazy in terms of change. But what do you think the next 5 years looks like for the hemp industry?
Well, as I'm sure we all know, prices are going to drop.
Yep.
Right? But as long as we're smart and we make educated decisions, mitigate the risk as much as we can, if prices drop by 20 times in 3 to 5 years from now, you're still going to make more money than you make with corn.
Yeah,
right?
No, that's a great point.
And so, these next 2 years where there is a bubble to make significantly more money than whatever else you were cropping, you got to make the right decisions. And I'm not saying it's the hemp mine by no means, especially there are regions where we haven't tried our genetics, but you just got to get educated, like anything.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Resources. And looking for the right
due diligence.
Yeah, there you go. Now, in terms of what you'd like to see in the Southeast, I mean, being from the Southeast, what would you like to see happen over the next 5 years here in the Southeast? A bunch of different crops producing hemp. Would you like to see it be more CBD or fiber related? What do you think might shake out?
I think we have the opportunity, with a lot of it being due to regulation, to really take CBD and run.
I like that.
The opportunity to grow really high CBD genetics.
Yep.
If you're picking the right one, it being able to perform disease resistantly.
Yep.
We have the opportunity to make use of all of our cattle land, our soybean land, and really stand out in the nation doing so.
I like that. I think we already stand out, but we'll do it a little bit. I'm a little biased.
Yeah.
So really the brass tacks of it now, the question of the podcast is, what three things, the three biggest things, are you considering when you're selecting a variety on your farm? Giving advice from the farmer's perspective, what are those three things that you're thinking about constantly?
Okay. So I think what trumps all is disease resistance.
Okay.
Right? Because if I have a crop that makes it, let's say, into 7 weeks of flower, it's beautiful, its yield is huge, and then a fungus comes in and completely eats the plant from bottom up, it doesn't matter what your yield or potency is because the plant's going to be dead.
Yeah.
Right?
Great
So
point.
disease resistance. From there, I really tie yield and potency together.
Okay.
So we can call that
Yep.
2 and 3, because we're growing milligrams here.
Okay.
Per acre, we're growing milligrams, and so you have to consider not only potency but also yield. And so when I'm selecting, that's my top 3.
I think that's really, really valuable for the folks listening, watching this to hear, because your number one was not what you'd hear out of 95, maybe even more percentage of people that you'd ask that question to. And it makes a ton of sense why it would be number one. So thank you for that. And I think that is very valuable for me to hear as well. Now, if someone sees this video or hears a podcast and says, I need to talk to Allison or her team at the Hemp Mine, get in contact with them, what's the best way for someone to do that?
Sure. So we have a website, thehempmine.com, simple as that. Also, you can get me by email. It's just Allison, 2 L's and an I, at thehempmine.com. And then also Instagram, dr.justice_grows.
Awesome. Well, the last thing I want to say is I'm going to have to go purchase a bottle of tincture myself because I don't have any more CBD tincture. But I think it's interesting. One, I'm enamored by the young plant business and what y'all are doing. But also, I think you're an example for folks that are looking to say, okay, well, how do I kind of keep this within the family? How do I vertically integrate this myself? How does that happen? And how do I do it on this scale? I think you're a great example for that. So definitely don't just be looking at thehempmine.com for young plants. Be looking for other products as well. Thanks so much for having me out to the farm.
Thank you for coming.
It's been awesome. Hopefully everyone else that sees this will enjoy the tour in terms of checking out the plants that we did some videoing of. I am thoroughly impressed and looking forward to coming out hopefully again next year and seeing that much bigger, better, and badder plants.
That's right.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Till next time, folks, start clean, stay clean.